So g'day, here we are. We come back now to look at the new slave-free trade pitch deck. There's been a lot of work gone into this. After our first go through, which you've seen in an earlier set of videos where we went through the first pitch deck, done a lot of work with David from Slave-Free Trade and Brian as well. You've seen their videos to go through this pitch deck and try and bring it to life, but also bring it into a place where it can be really effective. And let's just recap. So the purpose of this pitch deck is to send it to potential investors. So in that sense, it's a pitch deck that needs to have enough explanation in there because they won't be standing up presenting it to the receiver. Now, if you were in that situation, you could probably just get away with a few pictures. You're there to tell the story. But in this case, we've got a pitch deck that you're not going to be there to actually tell that story. So the pitch deck needs to convey sufficient information about you and your organization and what you're trying to do, the pain point, the problem you're trying to address, so that the receiver gets inspired to go to the next step. And in this case, that would be to call Slave-Free Trade and say, come and have a talk. I'm interested in investing in your program and helping you get up off the ground. So we've done that work. Lots of backwards and forwards, lots of thoughts. It's been a great process for the guys at Slave-Free Trade because they hadn't necessarily thought through all the aspects of their story. It was present, but they hadn't brought it down into a single place. So this has been a useful exercise. Now let's start going through the deck. So the first slide, the opening slide, is much better. I said previously in the first slides that I was quite happy with the opening slide that the Slave-Free Trade guys had in the original pitch deck. In fact, after a bit of reflection, I decided I didn't like that because it didn't really explain things to me. It was the logo was there, the Made in Freedom was there, and it just had a hand reaching out towards the sunlight. It didn't really say what that hand was about, so it was a bit unclear what it was all around. And if you knew Slave-Free Trade was, the hand had a phone, so if you knew Slave-Free Trade was oriented towards technology, maybe there's a connection there. But it was a bit vague. Okay, so we've come up now with a really beautiful picture of people working. They're working in making salt, but there's beautiful light there. Slave-Free Trade's very prominent, and Made in Freedom is there, which is their terrific strapline. I'm going to come back to this whole question of light as we go through the slides. I'm not going to say anything about it now, but when you see this slide, I think you'll see it's beautiful. You capture people's attention. There's workers there, which ties in with the Made in Freedom. So this is pretty cool. So then we go to well, let's say the second slide, but really the first slide beyond the opening slide. Now, what we want to get across here is that there's an issue, and we want to help the people who are looking at this presentation understand that not only is it an issue, it's a huge issue, it's a global issue, and it needs attention. We don't have to do that in one slide. As we've gone through here, I've tried to make it with the Slave-Free Trade guys, is that every slide sort of tells its own little story. So there's not 10 bits of information on the slide. Right? That's really important. I think we can put too much information on a particular slide and we can just absolutely confuse people. So here we come with the heading Slavery Today. Most people think that slavery disappeared with abolition and the end of the American Civil War. And we put a little quote in there, maybe it exists here and there in the dark, faraway places, but I don't think so. The world is a better place now. And this is a common misconception about slavery. So there it is up front. And that'll resonate, I think, with people who receive this presentation because maybe they don't know that slavery is such a problem. So this starts them from the place of where they are. Right? If we want to take someone to a new place, it's really helpful to start from the place where they are. And I think this helps. And then we say, sadly, the truth is very different. Slavery never went away. And in bolder text, so they really get the message, right? It's right at the bottom. It just went into the shadows. Now, this is where we're starting to bring into this question of light. So we go back to the first slide. There's the sun is rising behind these workers. So you get this sense of light coming through, okay? And then the next slide, we're talking about shadows. Slavery went into the shadows. It went into the darkness. You can't see it. Now, we're not explicitly using light as a metaphor, but it's present here. And we'll repeat it again and again as we go through. And well, it is a beautiful picture in many ways. It's a picture, it would seem to me to be a family, young children, a lady there carrying a heavy load. There's some sort of banana or something like that, plantains perhaps. And you'll see behind them, there's darkness. There's darkness there. We originally had the photo of the African miners, but because we couldn't find the author of that, we couldn't get permission to use that slide, unfortunately we had to replace it. But this is still quite a powerful slide. So we captured. Slavery went into the shadows, and here it is. These people working in tough conditions. So we capture the story right there, and you've connected to people's emotions. Okay, important. Now again, so we go to the next slide. Again, we're not peppering slides with pictures too much and text. Pictures, text, pictures, text. People don't know whether they're looking at the picture or they're looking at the text. What's the message behind each? There's a couple of slides later on where we've got a little bit of that, but mostly not. You'll remember the first slide, we had pictures everywhere, didn't really know what they all mean, what they were trying to convey. Did they link to the words? So we've just got rid of the pictures, okay? And we've just got a few key points. We're still talking about the issue here. There are more people suffering in slavery today than during the entire 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade. So that's a pretty big message. 70% of businesses have modern slavery hidden in their supply chains. Another big message. Tens of millions of people suffer in modern slavery. It's a global problem. So, 4 key points. Now, at the bottom there, you'll see sources provided at the end of the presentation. In the original presentation, we had sources. Some things had sources, other things didn't have sources. It was a bit unclear. And because it was unclear, you took away from the power of the message that slavery is a global problem. Okay, and here it is. I think you've got it pretty clear. And then we've got the map. Question mark about whether we bring the map in or not, but it's quite a powerful map, and the headline is very clear. Slavery exists in every single country. And then the data is there. All of the countries are coloured. So I think it's quite a useful map. It's very visually stimulating. There's a lot of dark reds there to highlight that slavery is quite present in a lot of these countries. So I think the map really adds to it. Right? You don't need to spend a lot of time looking at the legend, working it out. Boom, you can see it. So it's a great image to really get across. And we've changed the text at the top. Slavery exists in every single country. Now the next one, we've got a lovely little artistic creation, and we say we touch slavery every day as often as we touch our faces. So this is a really powerful message. And rather than have pictures, we had pictures there before that weren't really clear. We've made a bit of a word cloud of the very common things that we buy and consume every day. We can see coffee, tea, fish, there's construction, laptops, t-shirts, smaller words, emerald, we can still read them. Gold, cotton, tomatoes, diamonds, chocolate, bookbinding, banknotes, stone, sesame, all these words. I'm like, wow, slavery exists in all of this. And it's just a very powerful word cloud that helps convey a very strong message. So again, use these sort of techniques to not fill up your slide with lots of confusing pictures, lots of confusing words. I personally love this slide. I think it's very powerful. Now we're starting to get into, so what are we doing about this? Like, God, it really is a global problem, right? It's in all of those commodities and all those products that we use. So we say here, efforts to combat slavery aren't working. Right, so the most important, auditing the producing end of global supply chains, so factories, farms, plantations, mines, etc., changes nothing. Now, it's a big statement. There's not a lot of there's nothing there to back that up, but we're not trying to have a thesis here to try and explain all of this. I think a lot of people understand that there's a lot of audits going on and we still have slavery. So, this is not an unreasonable conclusion. We're not really coming out saying anything that people couldn't bring themselves to agree with. So I think that's important. We're not making some ridiculous statement that everyone says, oh, that's rubbish. People who would be receiving this presentation will know enough about the way supply chains work and what efforts are being done to clean them up that they'll understand that there's a lot of audits going on, and yet still we have modern slavery. If you look at the map, we just had that. We had the word cloud. Yep, audits aren't working, are they? It's a bit of a logical conclusion of what we've already shown before. And then we say there are no efforts at the buying or consumer end. So everyone, everywhere, is completely blind. Okay, so we've got that image of that metaphor of light coming in, light and darkness. They're blind, they can't see, as to how the things they buy are made in darkness. Everyone everywhere is completely blind as to how the things they buy are made in darkness. So we're bringing in that emotional metaphor about light. I think it's really powerful. And it's a thread that runs throughout this part of the presentation, at least. Okay? Do you see that? So think about a metaphor that you can bring into your work, that you can have sort of, you don't have to put it on every slide and ram it down the person's throat, but it's present. Okay? So that's a useful thing.